Okay, in this video we are going to be looking at the concept of income elasticity, and income elasticity is written YED. Y stands for income in economics. And so income elasticity just simply looks at the relationship between an individual's income and their demand for a product. And so if their income's going up, how are they going to buy more of a product? And if so, how much more are they going to buy? If their income's going down, will they buy more or less of a product, and then how much? All right, and so the formula that we use for income elasticity, and we'll just put it in the familiar form that we've been using for the other ones, is percent change in the quantity demanded. Again, this is the same throughout. All right, the top number is going to always be the same, divided by the percent change in income. Okay, so let's just take some examples here. So let's say that your income, so your income goes up, income increases by 10%. And let's say that we're buying shoes. All right. And so if your income goes up 10%, what's going to happen to the number of shoes you buy? Let's say that it goes up 30%. Okay. So what would be the income elasticity coefficient? And so all you do, and this is the percent change in quantity demanded, percent. All right, and so over here we'd say, okay, we got the 30 there, and that's positive, and our income went up 10%, and so the income elasticity for shoes we would say is a 0.3. And we'll get into what the positives mean and what the numbers mean in just a second. But let's take another one, for example. How about Toasted O's? All right, this is an off-brand cereal that is similar to Cheerios, okay, but it costs less. And so, again, let's say you get laid off from your job, all right, and so your income, you were making a certain amount, and now you have another job that doesn't pay nearly as much, and so your income goes down by 40%, all right. So this is a change in income of 40% down. What's going to happen to the number of Toasted O's that you buy? And so a lot of times, if people's incomes go down, there are certain products that they buy more of. And so this would be an example of it, and we'll talk about what these are called in just a minute. But so let's say your income goes down by 40%, and you decide that you're going to buy 20% more Toasted O's. All right. And so what's the income elasticity of this product? So again, plug and chug. There's the plus 20 in the quantity demanded. And this is a minus 40 in the change in income. And so we would say that the Toasted O's have a negative 0.5 income elasticity. All right. So let's go to the next slide. And so we want to look at these couple of different terms. This to show that normal goods have a positive value of income elasticity, and inferior goods have a negative value. So a normal good simply means that the quantity demanded increases when income increases, and the quantity demanded decreases as income decreases. There's a direct relationship between, let's write that out, direct relationship between quantity demanded and income. And so most goods are like this. All right, if your income goes up, you tend to buy more stuff. Think about guitars. All right, if you're a guitar player, if your income starts to go up, you might buy a second guitar or a third guitar. If you're a drummer, you might buy more drums. So as your income tends to rise, you buy more of a product. And like I say, most products are considered normal. The other type is what we call an inferior good. And this would be like the Toasted O's example on the other slide. So an inferior good, as the quantity demanded, I'm sorry, let me write that in the opposite way. I should have written it in the opposite way up here. If your income goes up, then the quantity demanded goes down. And as your income goes down, the quantity demanded goes up. All right? So there's an inverse relationship between income and quantity demanded. All right? Now, think of another good. The one that I always like to use in class mostly is ramen noodles. All right? When you're in college, your income is probably going to be rather low. Okay? That's just the life of a college student. And so when you're in college, you will probably start to eat a lot of ramen noodles. When you graduate and hopefully you get a good job and make a lot of money, you'll notice that the number of ramen noodles that you buy tends to go down. All right, and so ramen noodles are it's a good example of, if money starts to get tight, then this is what we start to buy more of. All right, and so it would be an inferior good. Now we want to look at break normal goods into two more categories. So in the realm of normal goods, you have one is a necessity, and then the other type of normal good is a luxury good. Okay, and so remember uh, when we did these calculations over here, we got numbers like 0.3, negative 0.5. And so for normal goods, a necessity is considered any value between 0 and 1. All right, and so if you do the equation and you get something, a value that equals like 0.2, then that is a pretty strong necessity. All right, the closer we get to 0, the more of a necessity it is. So we might say something like water, or just basic food would be like a 0.2. A luxury is anything greater than 1. And so over here in the example that we did, we had shoes. We said that that was a 3. All right, that means that shoes would be considered a luxury good. Okay, so I think we got that. Distinguish with reference to income between necessity, income inelastic. So yeah, if this coefficient is between 0 and 1, we would call this an inelastic income good. All right, and then luxury would be an elastic good. Now, let me go over real quick the signs, because on the other slide, you'll notice, so I should have just erased the whole thing. When we did those other calculations, you notice that some of them were positive and some of the signs were negative. And so if we have a positive sign, then that's going to indicate that this is a normal good. Because it's just saying if your income goes up, it fits this relationship here. If this is positive and this is positive, then it's going to be normal. All right. If this is negative and this is negative, you end up with a positive, and so it's going to make it a normal good. Here we have different signs. That goes down, that goes up, and so if it's a positive number, then it's a normal good, and then we can clarify whether it's luxury or necessity. If it's a negative number, it's an inferior good. All right, and the bigger the bigger the number gets, the more sensitive the product is to people's change in income. So if we had like a negative 0.8, it's just very strong inferior good. So if your income goes down, then you will definitely buy more of this. Whereas if it were like negative 0.5, you're going to buy a little bit more of it, but maybe not a whole lot. Same over here. If we look at something that has a 0.2, okay, positive, it's a necessity, but are you really going to buy a whole lot more of it if your income goes up? And so think of something like milk. All right, if I told you that you won the lottery tomorrow, you got $1 million, are you going to go out and buy a whole lot more milk? And the answer is probably no, because what you're consuming now in milk is about as much as you want. You're not going to drink 5 gallons a day just because you won the lottery. But if I said, how about electronics? You're going to go out and buy a whole lot more electronics. You're going to say, you bet, because I got a lot of money now. And so electronics would say, might have, this might be high, but might have an income elasticity of 5, meaning that as your income goes up, people definitely buy more of it. Whereas milk would have something like a 0.2, or bread or stuff like that would have a lower income elasticity. All right. Now the last thing that we want to look at is the implications for producers and for the economy of a relatively low income elasticity for primary products, higher for manufactured, and even higher for tertiary goods. Okay. Or services. So primary products, when we think of primary products, this is just the basic raw materials generally. Think of like fruits and vegetables and things like that. Manufactured goods, think of electronics and furniture and transportation. And services or tertiary, you'll hear that term. Tertiary goods think of things like massages and healthcare and banking and travel. So, what if you are a country and you produce, the one thing that you produce is wheat? All right. Do you think wheat has a high or low income elasticity? All right. If you make a lot more money, are you going to buy a lot more wheat? And the answer is no. You're not going to buy a ton more wheat because you're probably eating close to what you want already. And so it might be at like a 0.4. Okay. Now, if you're this country and you're growing wheat, let's say that there's a global economic expansion. And countries are getting rich all over the place. You know, there's a huge increase in income all across the world. If you're sitting there and you're making wheat, are you going to benefit a lot from this big rise in income throughout the global economy? And the answer is no, because even though people's incomes are going up, the product that you have is a zero point 0.4 on the income elasticity measure, and so people aren't going to necessarily buy a whole lot more of your stuff. And so this is one of the problems that a lot of developing countries have, is that they produce a lot, mostly primary products, and so they miss out. If there's a big global expansion, they miss out because they're not producing the things that people are going to want to buy with all that extra income. Okay, so that can be a problem for developing countries. Now, looking at raw materials like oil, uh, if you're a country with oil, this doesn't work as well. All right, oil is going to have more of an income elasticity. Diamonds, it's a primary commodity. That's terrible handwriting. Diamonds are primary commodities, but obviously, if you get more money, you're going to buy more diamonds, and so diamonds probably have something like I don't know, 4 or 5 income elasticity measures. So. Again, looking at what you're producing. So think of a country like, let's say the U.S. If there's a big increase in income, uh, do producers in the U.S. benefit? Somebody like Apple products, do they benefit when there's a big increase in incomes? And you would say they would be extremely happy with an increase in incomes because they have things like iPads and iPhones and iPods and ITV. Well, maybe not yet, but so anyway, so they have these manufactured goods and they have the electronics, and so the income elasticity for the Apple products would definitely be pretty high. And so if there's any increase in income, they're going to see a big increase in their sales and the quantity demanded. Now, this is all good for Apple, and this is not so good here. But what if there's a global recession? If people's incomes start to go down, who gets hurt the most? The people that get hurt the most are the people who are doing things like electronics and producing furniture and transportation and lots of health care and massages and travel and stuff like that. And so if your product is income sensitive, all right, meaning it's a high luxury good or it's a strongly inferior good. If your product is income sensitive, then if there's a downturn, it's going to affect you. Okay, so try and think of a business that, and this is going to sound bad, but think of a business that was probably happy, and I don't mean not necessarily happy, but who do you think was happy when the global recession hit? All right, think about it for just a minute. So people's incomes started to drop. This handwriting is sad. People's incomes go way down during the global recession, and not that people are happy out of other people's misery, but who benefited from the drop in income from the 2008 recession? All right, if you're thinking along the lines of the people who make ramen noodles and the people who make toasted O's, then you're thinking along the right lines, because if people's incomes dropped, we would expect to see people buy a lot more ramen noodles. And let's say that you are an investor and you wanted to invest money and you saw this big global downturn coming on, you might say, you know what, I need to buy stock in things like ramen noodles and companies that produce inferior goods. All right, so anyway, that's about it, and we'll leave it there, and we'll look at price elasticity of supply coming up. So that's all for now, and we'll see you next time.